Hello and welcome to the Buckets and Tea NBA podcast. I'm your host, Cathryn Naiker. Thanks so much for tuning into this week's episode. My guest today is a prolific NBA writer. She recently did a cover story for Dime magazine about James Wiseman. I highly recommend it. It's all about his journey through his injury recovery, therapy, picking up music, how Klay Thompson inspired him to keep going. It's a really awesome feature. As well, she has a weekly feature on Substack called Basketball Feelings, and I feel like it dives into the NBA in a very unique way, in the only way she can. It's Katie Heindl. How are you?
I'm very well. That was a great intro.
Thank you. You know, I'm trying to step up the professionalism, you know, Katie?
I felt it.
Yeah?
I was
okay.
Like, what is this? A TV segment?
Did it feel that way?
It did.
Oh man, it's called growth. It's called growth. You love to see it. Katie, you know, I'm really glad I have you on this week of all weeks because it's been a weird week.
It has.
You know, it's just been a weird week. There's been anti-Semitism. There's been a lot of weird stuff going on. You know, we talk about the world in the NBA and then we dive into the Raptors stuff. Let's get all this kind of Kyrie stuff out of the way. I feel like I don't even know where to start. Obviously, like I don't support hate speech of any kind. Not that I don't support free speech, but it's just things have consequences as they should. And it's been upsetting. And I feel like I almost wanted to start this off by saying, like, obviously I don't support this, but I feel like we just live in a world where it's not even that obvious anymore. And you know, I feel like, you know, like Joe Tsai and other people, the NBA came out and were just like, we don't support his comments, which is really, I suppose, all they can do. I felt like you wrote an amazing piece about this in Basketball Feelings, and you had a quote or a bit of a quote. I'm going to try and read this, Katie, off the top here. Okay. You wrote, some of this is about the perception of media's place in sports or anywhere, and the changing perception of what sports should include. For Irving, eventually curtailing questioning about his aggregation of Alex Jones about sharing an anti-Semitic video because the questions weren't about basketball is a convenient out as much as it is a glaring non sequitur when none of his teammates nor his coach wanted to talk about how bad a game of basketball it was that they just played. And I feel like that really nails it for me. You know?
I mean, I think for me, I watched that presser a few times because I did write about it, and I did get kind of frustrated anew every time at different parts of it. Every time I think Kyrie's kind of fainting and shifting away from questioning when it was convenient to him or when he was pressed on something is pretty telling. I have like this now feels like a too harmless comparison, but I have a friend who says Kyrie Irving's kind of like one of those people you knew in like college or university who just like takes like a poli-sci class once and then just gets like, do you know about this? But again, that now feels almost like too like innocent or maybe like ignorant of a comparison because it's clear he knows what he's doing. But that specifically, that line of when he was trying to kind of shift it away and shut it down and just be like, does anyone have any like basketball questions? It's really interesting to me because there was a good chunk of last season when, you know, like Kyrie didn't even want to play. He didn't play basketball. He didn't want to talk about basketball. And so it's to me like a very convenient shield to bring up. And like that game was garbage. And all his other teammates knew it and felt it. They were super frustrated, you know, with how the team played, with how the Nets look, which is not great to start the season. So again, it's just like that to me seems such an obvious way to try and deflect, which to me was the entire line of that presser. Just deflect, a lot of double speak, you know, talking about the platform he had, but then doubling down, you know, not even 5 minutes later and saying like, what platform do I even have? And I don't think Kyrie is naive enough You know, like I do think he's an intelligent person. I just think there's like a certain level between like intelligence and willful ignorance and naivety. And he is no longer like on the tightrope of that. Like I feel like he's tumbled understandably off of it. So for someone like that to just say like, I'm not promoting anything, like he lives in the same world that we all do, which is what I was trying to really distill as best I could in what I wrote about it, because it's not just one thing. Like this is the reason this is happening to me seems like there's a lot of different factors that play into it. But the main thing being that Kyrie can't excuse himself, you know, from like the online world that he and we all participate in. And say that, you know, just on a whim, he kind of posts something and isn't going to understand the implications of that or how many people are even just going to see it. Like I was going to make a reference in that post, but I was like, this feels too light. But I was like, you know, the only people that can maybe do that are like your older parents who are like,
right.
I didn't know what I was posting. I didn't know how like Instagram works or Facebook works, but like you can't. That doesn't work when you're
because he said something along the lines of he's just doing this for his community, quote unquote, and it's like, no, your platform's larger than just the people who follow you.
Yeah, and I'm like still kind of unclear. Like if you want to talk that talk and talk about like being a community builder, you know, and like looking out for a community, I don't really feel like he has necessarily backed that up. I was chatting about this last night at the game with a couple people, and like obviously Kyrie Irving has done a ton of philanthropic and community work and like donating money. I think that's very important and necessary. And I'm not like trying to deviate from that. But now this pattern is like does something kind of awful and then like donates a ton of money. And like you see that pattern typically in like more conservative or like right wing, you know, like frankly, kind of like dangerous political figures or just like, you know, public figures. And you can't excuse, like you can't just throw money at something and not take accountability. Right. And I don't know, it's a dangerous situation right now. It seems like his words have the potential for harm to befall people. And I think that's another thing where we can't just look at it anymore and be like, oh, he's just like, you know, messing around on the internet or like, why does it have to matter so much? It's like, well, because we've seen that it does. And some people, you know, take this kind of stuff really seriously, and it informs not just their perspective that they themselves kind of look through the world at, but like their actions. And that's where there's potential, I think, for real harm and danger for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, Katie, I think all of that's really well said. I couldn't agree more. And I think like, you know, I've said this before about Kanye. Wow, about Kyrie Irving. I
mean,
you know, so kind of both are going through it right now.
Yes.
I feel like with Kyrie, I feel like he in the last few years he's approached basketball as someone who doesn't love their job. And I think with a lot of people who kind of get on this and start spewing this kind of hate and looking for this kind of attention, it's like there's always something else going on. You know, there's always something going on beyond just the words themselves. And I don't mean that to give him like sympathy, because I feel like accountability is really important. But I've felt this way for years about Kyrie. Like there's something else going on with this guy. And like you said, you know, it's just going to keep growing and growing. I do stand-up comedy, and there's this part of me that just doesn't want to acknowledge what he's saying, because in stand-up comedy, it's like, if you're getting booed, that's not the worst thing that can happen to you, because you're still getting attention and people are still paying attention to you. You're still captivating people. It's when people just start talking around you and they're not even listening to you. That's the worst thing that could happen. And there's this part of me that wants to treat him like that, but he's just too big for that. And like you said, like these words have the potential to cause harm to others. And so you can't ignore it, but it's so frustrating. I don't know if I'm just getting completely dejected at this point, but it's just really frustrating, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's pretty normal. Like, that's why I think something that surprised me, I've been seeing a lot of the comments or commentary about it, where it's like, how is this how is this related to basketball? Or like, that's the criticism that, like, you know, media or like journalists get in those situations of like, why are you asking about this? It has nothing to do with basketball, but it's like, it does, because we've also made, all of us collectively, fans, media, basketball players themselves, have turned the NBA into a product that offers like things to opine on and like have takes on and engage with 24/7, 365 days a year, right? It doesn't mean that everything is like important, worthwhile news, but like this has been generative over so many years. And the NBA is aware of it too. Like that's what happens when you're trying to make like a multi-billion-dollar business and expand it globally. Like you have to engage with everyone at every level, not just like kind of your traditional quote unquote fans who are just there to like watch basketball. So it's sort of the reality that we live in. I also kind of quibble with the people's general understanding of like what journalists' jobs actually are. Just because you're like a sports beat writer, you know, like it doesn't mean that you can then just ignore the bad things that like the people whose job it is to like produce that product, in this case basketball, and the athletes that play basketball do. Just like it's not your job to ignore the good things, right? And the humanizing things. So it's important to cover that, like that in its like totality. So that's just been, I don't necessarily know how to square that away yet, but that's been an interesting thing to see happening.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm like, yeah, we can move on to our next topic. It's kind of grim off the top here today, this week, everyone.
And it's all like grim. All to say that, like, because I'm going to say this with, I think, the next thing we're going to talk about, but the difficulty in these situations is, I think, also in sports media, the idea is that like these things are kind of one and done and very finite, whereas like these specific things are not, right? Like they're like, there's a lot of layers to them. They're not like, they're going to be ongoing. You know, you don't just kind of get to talk about them and like put them away on the shelf like a game. Right. It's like they're very messy and very nuanced. And that's a problem in traditional sports media because it hasn't always been able to tackle those things in that way.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like it's just, do you find that it's a lot to hold at the same time?
It can be, definitely. I mean, I think that's why I write about them, because for me that's an outlet. I think it's important to kind of, if you're going to keep a hold on these things and engage with them, which again I think to some degree is important as a fan, to like expose and be honest about the kinds of things that you're seeing, and not, you know, be ignorant to the whole picture. But I think it's important to keep a light hold, if that makes sense, you know, to realize that these things are fluid and changing, and to maybe be okay with the fact that like your mind or opinion about something may and will probably change if more information kind of comes out. And I'm not trying to be like dark and hinting at what I think we're going to talk about now, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, all right. I had so much I was going to dive into, and then I thought maybe we'll move on to our next topic, which is Josh Primo. So yeah, Josh Primo was let go somewhat abruptly by the San Antonio Spurs because he was flashing women. There were multiple instances, including some of the San Antonio Spurs staff. And so he's been let go from the team. There's talk about potentially he could get picked up by another team. He said he's going to take a bit of a mental health break. And I will say, as horrible as this is, the one positive I can say is I appreciate the accountability. Right? Like, again, like it's not about like God, I don't want to get into a cancel culture debate, but it's just, you know what I mean? It's like, he's not being canceled. He's not out of the league forever. It's nothing like that, but it's just like, you did this thing. It's wrong. You're holding yourself accountable by saying you're gonna take a mental health break, which I hope is real. And I think it's real. I don't think that's a performative thing on his part. And hopefully he can figure those things out for himself. I find personally, as a female basketball fan, and I'm sure all female sports fans deal with this to some degree, it's tough because it's like basketball is supposed to be this like great escape, right? Like it's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be our entertainment. It's supposed to be the thing that we go to get away from all the BS in the world and in our lives and all that stuff. And I think like women are drawn to fans or drawn to sports in a similar way male sports fans are drawn to sports. But then when it comes to stuff like this, I'm personally just finding it harder and harder to just like pretend it's not there. You know, I don't want to pretend it's not there, but I also really want to keep enjoying basketball. And I just find like it's, you know, in this case, like I am grateful that there was accountability here, but there's just so many circumstances where accountability isn't there, or maybe there's like some inconsistencies in the way we're kind of approaching it, like, you know, thinking like Robert Sarver or somebody like that, where like a year suspension just feels so light in comparison to what was actually happening there. And I just find like, I'm just going to speak for myself, it's getting harder and harder to just enjoy the game. Maybe I'm the only one. Maybe I'm on an island with that, and that's cool. And for those listening, I appreciate you very much, you know. But yeah, I'm just finding it hard. And I feel like you are full-time in this space and you very much speak your mind, especially in basketball feelings. How is it for you? Just like, I'm just going to keep taking up space. Is that the thing for you?
First, I didn't mean to railroad you.
No, like, I railroad myself fully.
Off of like what?
Fully.
Okay.
I railroad myself.
Okay. I mean, it kind of goes back to what you were saying before of like how you keep a hold on these things, right? And how you kind of choose, especially as a woman in this space, like how you choose to engage with it. Sometimes you don't have a choice because you find out about these things like at a game, right? Or like, you know, they kind of pop up as they do like in the middle of your day. You could be working on a story. You could be like hanging out with your friends and family. You could just be like trying to take some downtime and like necessary time away from it. I think for me, again, like the thing I always come back to is just like writing is a good outlet. It's frustrating sometimes to feel like, oh, this is like to feel so repetitive and like a broken record. And like, I'm just writing about the same thing again. And I guess for me, that's like a lot of domestic violence and sexual assault allegations within the NBA. But that does pertain, I think, to like how being a woman in the media space, that does, and like how the league handles these things, that does inform the way that I engage with it. I can say like empathize with what you said in terms of feeling like it's harder to enjoy basketball. I sort of had a stretch of that myself, but I think it was with specifically like fandom and the Raptors and kind of not necessarily understanding or wanting to, or feeling like I could engage with the team in the same way around the Terrence Davis allegations and the team I'm on that season, you know, and kind of quietly shipping him off when they got the opportunity to, and then using the justification that like, oh, we talked to all the women that we employ and they said this was fine. So there's things where you're like, you're left wanting, right? Because you're like, that wouldn't make any sense anywhere. Like, why do you think it makes sense here? So that kind of stuff is hard. But I think if you feel like yourself sort of not engaging with it in the same way, it's totally fine to like take a step back or kind of hold your fandom at arm's length. I don't think that's like means you'll never watch or like or engage with basketball in the same way again. I just think, you know, like we were talking about earlier, like everything is just, I think maybe going to get a bit more nuanced. I think especially if you're like a woman in the space and you are engaging with it, it sucks because, yeah, as you said, like you do want it to be an escape. You do want it to be kind of one-dimensional, sort of like hallowed ground. But there's constant reminders, right, of the real world kind of creeping in and why that's not always possible.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm also like, I also go through phases with it. You know what I mean? There's some times where I'm just like having just the best time as an NBA fan, you know what I mean? Just absolutely having the best time. And then there's just other weeks where I'm just like, oh God, not all of this again.
To your point about Primo, though, I do want to say, like, you know, I've seen the line of questioning around him saying it was a mental health, that it was like stemming from mental health, his actions and behavior. And I don't want to totally discount that. I understand like the dangers and maybe using that as a trope. I also kind of want to underscore the fact that like he's incredibly young.
Yeah.
And like this has apparently happened so many times in a short period of time that it does make me quite like, usually that kind of instance is a trauma response, and is a response. It's like a power dynamic thing, right? At least, when we've kind of encountered this in the public sphere before. But he's such a young person. So I mean, we only know what we know. So I'm not trying to also speculate on somebody else's mental health or their, reasons why they did or did something. And I'm also not trying to like side not with the women who've come forward. And there's going to be a press conference, I think, on Wednesday. And I think we have to take that into account because that's a little bit unusual in this case. And like the Spurs taking such quick action as well is a little bit unusual in the grand scheme of like the NBA, right? So it seems like this is like tip of the iceberg stuff. It seems like there's probably a lot more going on, and it's fluid again. So I think the thing with this is like there's so much nuance to it. It's not just black and white. You can't just be like, chuck this guy out of the league, and then like, I agree with you. I don't know if it's like, it is very good to just like remove somebody and then it's kind of like, brush your hands of it, like case closed. It doesn't really solve anything.
Yeah. And, we're recording this Tuesday afternoon on November 1st. So if something happens like after we've recorded this, then, that is what it is. The basketball news cycle is very fast moving. But yeah, I mean, who knows? I'm very intrigued to see what will happen on Wednesday. But, I do appreciate anyone that's trying to better themselves. And so I just really hope that that's very, very legit on his part. And I'm not going to doubt him as of now.
Yeah. And I also wonder, like, as someone who's so young, like the lexicon, maybe of language he has to express like what is happening, maybe mental health and like, trauma, like those are things that, whether you like it or not, that you hear them a lot now. I'm not trying to say that they're just like chalk phrases for him, but like maybe he doesn't know how to explore, or like it's a big thing to ask someone to like publicly make a statement of that. So again, like it's tough because it's like, I abhor his actions. Like I do not condone that shit. But it's also, again, you got to keep a light hold. This stuff is just moving. So like, I think that's the best way to like stay sane about it. You don't want to just plant your flag on like a hill and be like, this is the one I'm dying on.
Of course.
As you said, it's been a weird week. But
it's been a weird week. But that is the best advice, Katie, and I appreciate that. All right, let's go on. This is now officially the We Are Trying podcast. Okay, we have some other more lighthearted NBA news. I want to talk about the 76ers. We will talk about them in context to the Raptors coming up for sure. But I also want to talk about them losing 2 second-round draft picks due to essentially tampering with free agency, mainly with PJ Tucker, that they just were essentially talking to him and negotiating before the actual free agency period. And that is the league's punishment for him. I think it kind of sparks a bigger debate about free agency and tampering, because it's like, it's kind of the equivalent of getting a ticket for jaywalking, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah.
Like the league is trying to uphold these rules, but they are rules that just like no one follows. And it's probably time that some of these tampering rules are like revisited and potentially revised, which will probably happen maybe the next time the Players Association wants to renegotiate. But Katie, what do you think?
Or like uphold them similarly across the board, right? If you're going to kind of met out punishment like this, it's got to be a bit more unilateral, because as you said, this happens a lot. The league is very small. Not everybody are like best friends, but like guys talk Everybody knows everybody.
Mhm.
So like, how do you determine like what's, Embiid or Harden texting PJ Tucker because they're friends, and then what's like egging him on to kind of come and join this team, or like, was it Daryl Morey directly? So
Yeah.
would I tamper for PJ Tucker? Absolutely. I think it's worth it to lose the picks, but Sixers fans might feel different.
I mean, they're second round picks.
Right.
So at this stage, two second round picks for PJ Tucker. Yeah, and then also too, I assume, you can correct me if I'm wrong, those picks, do they where do they go? Like, do they go to the G League? Like, where do they go?
I should know, but I don't know.
They just go into the ether. It's like, goodbye, goodbye, other job opportunities.
Yeah. Like they maybe I don't know. Are they redrafted? Can I Google this quickly on the fly?
Yeah, let's Google this quickly on the fly. Because I mean, that was just so weird to me. Because I'm like, oh, like, you're just gonna take draft picks away, but who gets them, right? Or they're just too fewer spots in the second round because we're just like, we'll just bury the second round, and then some team will just have an extra spot on their G League team. I'm not. Yeah, so it's an interesting punishment.
Where in this first one? Thanks, The Athletic. Give me some more details next time.
That's so funny. It's like, what is my subscription for, huh? The Athletic?
Not subscribed. That was a free. Yeah, I'm not subscribed. Used to have a free subscription that ran out.
Yeah, you know what I've done, it's just so bad of me, but like, you can subscribe and get that deal for like a few months, and then you unsubscribe for a bit, and then they just start pining for you, and then just keep offering you more discounts, and then you resubscribe. Yeah, and you could just do that back and forth and save yourself a ton of money.
That's smart. That's also the New York Times is like a whole thing, and that makes sense because they're rescinded. They've rescinded the second round picks in 2023, 2024. We knew that. Mm-hmm. Where do the picks go?
I don't know. My guess is it has something to do with the G League, but I'm not entirely sure.
Doesn't say.
Fair. Hey, now we've done our research.
We tried to do some research. Someone's gonna comment. They go here.
But I think I don't think this is going to change anything. I do think that people will continue to tamper. I think teams are just like, fine, we'll just give up our second round draft picks, whatever. We'll figure it out. Yeah. But I do think. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No.
You please.
Interrupting you. It's not right.
You're the guest.
No. Please.
No, just I do think that all the rules around tampering are worth revisiting, because I think it just makes sense to be realistic about how free agency is negotiated. I mean, I believe teams recruit players even years in advance, especially like the bigger players. Like, I think they're on that like years and years prior to their actual free agency. And I just, it's like, why are we pretending that isn't happening,
No, I agree. And I think so too. I also think that what I was going to say is that the punishment in this case, it's not necessarily so steep for a team like the Sixers, who like gets what they want, which is they wanted these guys in the immediacy, right? They wanted their impacts this season. So then it's like, if you're building a team like the Sixers, where maybe they view themselves as like a few little like tweaks here and there as being like away from finals contention, right? Mm-hmm. Then what are 2 second round picks, right? You're not in this kind of timeline where you're trying to develop your team in the same way that like, our Toronto Raptors team is, or the Spurs are, for example. Like, it's less, I guess it's less a severe punishment because of where they are in their own competitive timeline. Mm-hmm. And you can't really change that, because that's like a flux thing that it changes like season to season, depending on like the winds of the league, and what's happening in a season. So then again, it's like, this would be a devastating, why am I blanking on the word punishment? Jesus.
We've only used it like 10 times.
I know.
Episode, honestly.
My brain was just like, enough. Don't stop saying that. But this would be a devastating punishment for a team like that was trying to develop talent. Like I think of the Warriors in like 4 years or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or like maybe even less. But for the Sixers now, it's sort of like, like I can't see Morey really losing that much sleep over it.
Yeah, that's true. I would love to see these picks in their own lottery, the tampering picks.
Yes.
That would be fun.
Like a bonus.
Yeah,
lottery.
I think there should be a bonus lottery for the other teams who didn't tamper to then get the tampered picks.
That's more loose because you're like, what is the criteria? It's like, who's been behaving themselves? Adam Silver just decides.
Adam Silver
Have
just
you been
decides
good? Yeah.
who did and didn't get caught.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's like Santa Claus.
Mm-hmm. Essentially, yeah. It's like you might as well have him dress up as like Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny and like give out the tamper picks. Would be entertaining.
That's how things would be if I ran things. Anyway, okay, there's been a ton of Myles Turner talk. He's really trying to shoot his shot to get to the Lakers by explicitly saying the Lakers should do everything they can, including trading their very infamous 2027 and 2028 first round draft picks to get him. Katie, if you were Rob Pelinka, do you make that trade?
I don't want to put myself in Rob Pelinka's brain because it's not. I don't know what's going on in there.
I don't know. I don't know if it's really working.
He's pretty comfortable, so maybe I do. Look, like there's a water crisis in California. Like 2027 feels like dire straits in California. Who knows what? Maybe that Lakers team will be relocated to somewhere.
No more almond milk in California.
Yeah,
you will be destroyed.
Maybe it'll be like relocated to the shores of Lake Superior, Great Lakes. We got a lot of water up here. Who knows? Right. But
Minnesota has two teams now, the Timberwolves and now the Lakers, as they once were.
North, exactly. I don't actually mind this as a thing that happened. I don't know, when your name is constantly for years being thrown around in trade scenarios, right? And like being stipulated on, for you to just go like on Woj's podcast and be like, yeah, trade for me. Like you're just saying what everybody else has been saying about you, for years and years. It shouldn't really be a surprise. I did see what Myles Turner said about that because obviously he got some blowback from Indiana fans, and he was like, look, like I was drafted to this team. This is the only team I played for in the NBA. Obviously I like to play for this team, but like what's been the plan for me for the last 2 seasons? And because I think the plan for the Pacers has been like a soft, if not severe tank. And like trying to use Myles Turner's name as like a bartering chip to get either like new talent into play alongside whatever hypothetical picks you're going to get down the road. But the Lakers are in shambles. If Myles Turner even wants to go to the Lakers, I feel like that's, like you're taking a lot on your shoulders with that as well. So yeah. I don't know. I don't hate it. I think it's very interesting if this is going to be something that like happens going forward, where players like can talk openly about like where they might want to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of intriguing because this year is unique in that there is going to be a large tanking race.
Yes.
More so than previous years for Victor Wembanyama. And if you're Myles Turner and you're like, this team is going to dump me for Victor if they can anyway, I would imagine it would be harder to be motivated to try and really build something there if like, oh, they could easily just not want to build this with me. And I think a lot of players, obviously there's appeal to being in LA, right? Like you're going to work with LeBron James, who you're going to learn a ton from, bigger spotlight, that could even lead to more like endorsement deals. and stuff. There's just so much advantage for him. Like I could see why the Indiana fan base would be annoyed by that. Like Toronto fans would be livid.
Oh yeah.
Right? If one of our players did that. So I definitely get it, but I also understand it from his point of view why he would want a better situation for himself. So it doesn't make me that mad. And I just think it's funny that he's just kind of out here shooting his shot, you know?
Yeah. Again, like I really don't hate it. Right. Like he kind of he's obviously a very self-aware person. He kind of took a look around at like the temperature of the team he's on and like what the franchise's priorities are. And they made it pretty clear that, you know, it is him, but not really if something sort of better comes along. And I don't know, you've got to sort of look at those cards on the table. And then if you can have any like control or proxy over where you can potentially go, okay.
Yeah.
Do it.
If I were the Lakers, I would not trade those picks. And I know people might disagree with me on that, but I just like the Lakers are not winning a championship. All right. Like, no, I don't, this is the most overrated bad team in a really long time.
Well, them and the Nets, right? It's funny to have two just like side by side the same season. It's very funny.
Yeah. They are very overrated bad teams. The Lakers do not have a path to win a championship in the next, I would say, 3 years. Why would you? And they've already lost so many of their draft assets. Hi, puppy. That it's like, why would you keep bankrupting your future when you don't even have a present? That's how I feel about it. Like they're not going to be a good team in 2027. And they're not going to be a good team in 2028. I feel like it's delusional to think that they're actually going to find a way to be good somehow because they've just shot themselves in the foot too much. So, I mean, trade for Myles Turner, sure, but I would not trade those picks.
Yeah, because you also need, like, they've traded away kind of all the good, like, players the role players that they need to sort of fill in the gaps around their stars, right? And, like, look what happens. So I'm with you. Like, I don't think it wouldn't be, the thing is, like, it wouldn't make a huge impact either way. It would be great for Myles Turner, which is, again, why I can't really find the energy to be angry about it. I also, like, can't really find the energy to be angry about it, given, like, all the other stuff we just talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. I love it. That is the kind of drama I enjoy.
We love it. More guys go on more podcasts, go on this podcast and talk about where you might want to go. Where are you looking at real estate? Imaginarily online. Everybody does it. Where are you looking?
I would love to have a fantasy real estate conversation with Myles Turner. That would be really fun.
Yeah. What kind of houses are you looking at? What sort of neighborhoods are you interested in LA?
Yeah. I just play Selling Sunset. You know that show on Netflix?
Yes.
I just play one of them. I watched that show during the pandemic and I was like, could I be one of those girls? Like they actually kind of got me into the fantasy a bit. And then I was like, no.
I mean, being one of them like seems like a fuller time job than the real estate aspect, which I was sometimes like, when do they sell houses? But that's not why I watched the show, so it doesn't matter.
It's not why any of us watch the show. Okay, let's move on to our Raptors Homer moment. So it's been a week of highs and lows. We had an amazing bounce back game yesterday against the Atlanta Hawks after what was an embarrassing loss against the Philadelphia 76ers. Probably one of our worst losses in quite some time. Yeah, I mean, I just want to ask you what's your pulse on the Raptors just based on this last week?
I think it's good. I think there were some.
Are you like, did you hit like heart attack level or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
No.
We're too young for that, but maybe someday.
Yeah, maybe some. Well, I hope not. I hope I would never feel heart attack level off of a off of a early,
I'm being dramatic,
second week of
the definitely.
Oh, really? Yeah. Off of like second week of the season. It sucks because like what happened with the Sixers in that second game felt very much like an old sort of Raptors, like habit, come out super flat, not really be prepped and like ready, or like be mentally, maybe you're like, yeah, I'm prepped and ready. And then like not actually be able to react and respond to the way that this team has adjusted. Like you're also playing them on a back to back. You've both had like a day off. You know they're going to come out in a different way. You can't game plan the same. Maybe Nick Nurse didn't game plan the same, but whether or not like the team then kind of took those instructions, they just looked super flat, no energy, kind of like they didn't really want to. And again, it's an early season game, so maybe they were like, okay. It had seemed decided by like earlier than the half, right?
Oh yeah.
But then the Hawks game, that was great. I think it was like obviously like Scotty Barnes shooting the lights out didn't hurt. I thought what was interesting was before the game, Nick Nurse was talking about how he wanted to see more offensive intensity from Scotty Barnes, and he actually was kind of upset by the fact that he hasn't seen that yet. And what he meant by that was specifically like getting to the rim more and like using his size and his strength to get there rather than shooting from the outside. But then like as a coach, when he gets like 3 threes in a row within like under 4 seconds, 5 seconds, you can't be like, don't take those shots when you feel like you have them.
Yeah.
So I get it. I get like that. Or also like you can't start him at point guard when you're like, I want you to be more of a traditional, like up around the rim, like
right.
Big. So, and I think that goes back to just like the fluctuation that we're seeing in the games. Like there's lineup adjustments, Nick Nurse is scheming, guys are getting used to like coming in and out at different, being at a different point in the lineup. It's still like the team skews younger. So it doesn't surprise me that there are adjustments, or maybe they're not able to like bounce back as swiftly as we would like again in that like Sixers loss. But I don't know. I feel pretty good from a Homer perspective about where they're at so far this season. There's a lot to like and be really interested in, you know? And that's like, to me.
Oh yeah.
That's what I want.
Overall, I also feel great from a Homer perspective. I, as terrible as that 76ers game was, it's like, if we're going to have a game like that, I'm glad it happened in October.
Yes.
I don't want to be in a position where Maxey starts living rent free in our minds. The way Marc Gasol was living in Joel Embiid's mind for a bit there, so definitely the next time we face them, I want to see a serious game plan for that kid. I mean, shout out to him for having an amazing like career night and stuff, but I don't want to be in a situation where it's like, wow, this guy just like really knows how to beat us. So, I'm not like worried or anything yet, but it's also just sort of like a little bit in the back of my mind. And I'm hoping that our next game against the 76ers, we really kick some butt. And I'm sure we will. Pascal Siakam is having a career season so far. Really, really exciting stuff. Even some MVP talk. Now, I don't know if we're going to get Matt Devlin saying MVP after his name or before his name every single time, just to like will it into the universe like he did with Freddie All-Star. And he kept saying like Scotty Roy, like he dropped the T for Rookie of the Year, Scotty Roy. But I don't know if we're going to get to that level. Not that I would hate it, because it worked, he really, the secret works with Matt Devlin. But what do you think are Siakam's MVP odds?
There were a lot of MVP chants going at the game last night. Scotty got asked about them. Pascal got asked about them, obviously. I mean, it's not out of the realm. Like, this is still the great early time in the season where nothing is out except for the Lakers doing well. I think nothing is really out of, or like the Nets figuring out what's going on. Nothing is out of the realm of possibility. I also think it's not unwarranted when you look at the way that he's playing, just like the intentionality that Pascal's playing with this season, and like the comfort and like confidence that he has when he talks about it. He's super loose, he's like not really, I guess I could say he was a little bit cagey, but I think he had reason to be like several seasons ago. But, now when he's asked like, why is it any different? He's like, it's not like if I go out and he's like, I'm just comfortable finally in this idea of like, if I go out and like, record 0 points, I'm still me. If I go out and I like get 30, I'm still me. Like nothing has changed, right? So I think like self-belief's a really important part of it. And it's just something that's kind of struck me being back around the team and listening to him get asked these questions and kind of answer in the same sort of consistent way. And like, I think his play has also been a lot more consistent and that helps, but I think he's enjoying playing with OG and this like nice defensive kind of spark that he's showing. I think he really obviously enjoys like playing alongside Scotty Barnes and kind of like the spacing that affords him. Same with Precious and the extra shooting with Gary. Like everything is like really syncing up nicely by design, I think. And, you know, for his own development, it's nice to see this leap. I don't want to like jinx it, but it feels very solid to me. So I don't think MVP is by any means like out of the realm of possibility, because that's what it is. It's just consistency.
Yeah,
like, you know.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I love that that's kind of his attitude as well towards it. Like, it doesn't sound like he's buying into the hype. Like, he's staying focused, he's staying driven. I mean, I know he has like all NBA first team goals, and I really would love to see that happen for him. And I mean, so far it's been a great start, and it's been a very exciting part of being a Raptors fan this season amongst many other things. They've been a fun team to watch, except for that one game where thank God I wasn't there in person. Otherwise I would have wanted my money back. Like, I would have been writing letters, but because it is not cheap to see the Raptors. So when they drop a dud like that, it's major woof. But anyway, don't want to dwell on that. I have another question for you. I feel like our bench is very intriguing this year. Really enjoying seeing Koloko this season. I feel like there's a bit of an informal audition process with the bench to see like who's going to be our sixth man, who's going to be our seventh man, who's going to be a part of that tight rotation come playoff time. During the playoffs, I mean, last year, Nick Nurse hardly played any guys, but during our championship season, he played about 8 players. So I feel like he's probably looking for like a top 8. And I'm wondering, this sixth man spot come playoff time, do we think it's going to be Koloko? Do we think it's going to be Precious? Or do we think it might be Chris Boucher?
I mean, I think you just talked us through who the 8 are. Like,
yeah, I think that is going to round out the 8, to be honest.
Yeah, I think I think I'd like it to be Precious. To me, that just seems more of a natural or kind of logical progression. And also the way that he's looked, his rebounding, all these kind of more, I wouldn't say necessary skills, but like these are like the extra kind of intangibles you want out of like a 6th man, right? Like you want them to be able to come off the bench and do everything, like do a little bit of everything, play really unselfishly. And that was like some critiques that like Precious got last season, for example, right? Is just like always taking the shot rather than like looking for the best shot. Maybe somebody else has that. So that's improved. The rebounding's a great thing. But I also think like Koloko's been such a surprise, like a great, great surprise. Like he already looks so much more, I think, fully formed. And I use that like trepidatiously, that's a bit hyperbolic, but like then we might have thought for, an athlete who was picked like where he was. But that's like what Masai and his team have like a pretty deft skill of. So I think it would be like Precious, maybe Koloko, and then Boucher. And just like in terms of order of like who's getting picked first and that kind of 6, 7, 8. But I think you nailed it. It just, sometimes it doesn't have to be that complicated. It's like you see it, it feels right. You named those guys already. There's a reason why, because they look really good. And that's one thing I didn't even mention is like in this quest for Pascal's MVP, but also just like depending on how far the team gets this season, to finally have a bench again.
Oh yeah, major.
I don't think it's gonna I think the minutes aren't gonna go any lower because like the minutes are always conditioning, right, for the core group. But just to be able to like have a bench as a backup, and not just a backup, to like come in and play like a solid 10 to 7 minutes a game when they're needed, so that everybody can take a little bit of a breather and also like score, not just like hold it down, but also like advance the game. It's gonna make I think it's gonna make all the difference.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I was so frustrated about that last season, and I'm so happy that we found a way to tweak that. Okay, Katie, it is, it's time for a Nick Nurse Hottie Highlight of the week, a segment I think only I care about, but you never know. I feel like there's got to be some other Nick Nurse stands out there. It's not an easy segment to uphold. I gotta let you know, like, I do a lot of research for this. I got people on the ground, sending me stuff to make sure I find a hottie highlight every week, because these polo shirts do nothing for me. But just that just to let everyone know that Nick Nurse's son dressed up as Pascal for Halloween this year. How cute is that?
It was very cute. Those pictures were really cute. Also, just the style that he chose to wear his headband in was pretty.
Really, it was just the headband and the jersey, but he's young enough that feels like a major. What else are you gonna do? Yeah,
that could fly. Yeah. No, I think it's really cute. I guess I should start reporting to you more from games if I notice anything. I was going to say that.
I need resources.
On Media Day, I thought that the pinky ring was gone. But last night, lo and behold, back? It's on his finger.
Whoa. Maybe it was out for cleaning or something.
Maybe misplaced somewhere. No, that's very cute. I love like NBA Halloween seasons, kind of like more like my Christmas time. I love seeing it. I don't think, touch wood, seen any the Joker costumes this season, though it does seem like every team needs to have at least one by mandate of the NBA, but haven't seen any. Raptors didn't have any. Scotty Barnes was a construction worker. I like
Scotty
that too.
Barnes was a construction worker. How did I miss that? Oh, he's adorable.
He's really cute. Juan Hernan Gomez and his partner were Neo and Harmony. Is that her name from The Matrix?
Oh yeah. That's fun.
Is that her name?
I don't remember.
I don't either.
Whoops. It's been a while. I didn't watch the new Matrix.
I did, but I don't remember. Anyway, I love it. Love costumes. It was great. That was very cute.
Yeah. And Katie, on Basketball Feelings, you do like an epic Halloween article. Do you want to tell us about it?
Sure. So this started I started doing them every Halloween. I want to say like 6-ish years ago, but I started writing these NBA fan fiction stories for The Classical, which was David Roth's Grant Landish blog, pre-Deadspin, pre-Defector. And the topics ranged from like Paul Pierce is a vampire to Chuck Hayes getting lost in Texas one year driving a chuck wagon and he gets ambushed by Matt Barnes's evil gang of Plumlees. This year, in a very spooky, for my very spooky Halloween story, I wrote about the mystery of like what is going on in OKC with all these picks. Why is this a team that seems like it gets really hot only to be pulled back and not progress? What's going on? Who's so obsessed with the picks that they can't get their clutches off of them? I will say it involves a humanoid lizard. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Josh Giddey, main characters, good duo. The heroics of one Lou Dort, Chet Holmgren factors into it. Anyway, you can read it at basketballfeelings.com.
Listen, these are the kinds of lizard people I want to read about, okay? Your NBA fan fiction.
I was even a little bit like, I can't get into the lizard people conspiracy theories, given everything that's going on right now and the temperature of like the league. So, I didn't want to be labeled a conspiracy theorist in that vein. So there is a line in the story, I will spare you, when Chet Holmgren asks Lou Dort, is the main bad guy. I can't spoil the whole story.
No.
It's like some kind of lizard person. And we're like, no, he's just a straight up lizard. So don't get your lizard people theories here. There's something more diabolical afoot.
No, that is so fun. It's such a great read. Yes, please check out Katie Heindl at Basketball Feelings. You can follow her at whatevs, spelled WTEVS. Katie, you're one of my favorite basketball writers, and it's so great to have you on this podcast. And thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. And even when I'm here live in my panic room.
Every room looks like a panic room when you move to a new place.
True. Thank you. But thank you. It's always a blast. I obviously love talking way too long with you.
Oh, well, anytime. Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye.